Okay, this is how I took my 10K time in 10 weeks from 51 minutes and 12 seconds to 39 minutes and 28 seconds. Today, I'm not just gonna show you the 3 changes that did it for me, but I'm gonna give you 3 sessions that I used in order to take 20% off my 10K time in just 10 weeks. I'm Lee Grantham, a running coach and a professional ultra runner. And I went from not being able to run for 500 meters to running 2 hours and 21 minutes for the marathon and representing my country for both the marathon and the ultra marathon. And now I help runners to make significant improvements in their training and then their performances so they can run times that they currently think are not achievable. So if you're serious about your running and you've got the work ethic and discipline and want the guidance and knowledge from somebody who's been there and helps runners to get there, then please book a call in the link in the description. Now, usually when we're getting into the 10K and we've come from 5K background, we've done some 5K races and park runs, and it's an all-out effort. And often, to begin with, there's some fade in that 3rd and 4th kilometer, and then we find something to finish fast in that 5th kilometer. Once you get into the 10K, you can't go out like that. And that's why we see, once you get well trained at 5K and 10K and your execution starts to get better, the difference between your 5K and 10K is your 5K time times around about 2.1. So if you're running 20 minutes for 5K, it's likely to be a 10K time around about 42 minutes. And I researched this, and so I knew what I was capable of for 5K, which at the time was just over 24 minutes. So about 4:45 per kilometer, 4:50 per kilometer. And I could hold that for 5K. Was it in control? Not really. And I was fading in that 3rd and 4th. And like many, bringing it back in the 5th, finishing hard, but it was always a 10 out of 10 effort. And when I went double the distance and ran or raced 10K, those problems I was facing in the 5K were exacerbated. And so the slowdown was worse. I would get to 6 and 7 kilometers and just not know how I was gonna get to the finish line, how I could run the next 3 or 4 kilometers. And so here's exactly what I did. Number 1, put a race in the diary. So I set a 10K exactly 10 weeks from deciding I wanted to run sub 40 minutes and be able to hold 4 minutes per kilometer or 6:26 per mile for the entire distance of a 10K race. And then along the way, I knew that I needed to train in a much smarter way, because if I wanted to run just under 40 minutes for 10K, then my 5K time needed to improve from just over 24 minutes to 19 minutes. So a minute per kilometer faster for 5K en route to running a faster, much faster 10K. Number 2, what's my starting point? Okay, I can run 5K in 4:45 to 4:50 per kilometer pace. How am I going to considerably move that forward en route to a bigger goal of running a sub 40 10K? Well, first of all, I'm going to need to treat my body in a completely different way and approach the sessions that I'm about to give you like an elite athlete. I've got to treat my body like an elite athlete in order to do insane leaps forward with my times. And so I looked at my training. I looked at the key sessions that had got me to 24 minutes and 51 minutes for 10K. What was I doing right and what was I doing wrong? I looked under the bonnet at absolutely every point that I could improve. And one simple point that I was neglecting, or certainly not optimizing, was I wasn't putting myself physically, mentally, physiologically in a position before the session in order to do a great interval session. So I changed my warm-up from being 1.5, 2 kilometers, super slow jogging, to whether it takes me 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, or even 24 minutes, I'm gonna put myself in a position where that initial pace for the interval that I want to hit is not a shock to my physical body, my mind, and also physiologically, it's not a shock to the heart. And here are exactly the sessions that I did in order to make that leap from 24 minutes to sub 19 minutes for 5K, and then in turn run that sub 40 minute 10K from 51 minutes, which is a 20% improvement in just 10 weeks. Number one, I'm remembering my start point. I can hold 445, 450 per kilometer for 5K. So the first thing I did was 10 times 500 meters at exactly that 5K pace until it felt easy. So that meant controlled, manageable sessions that I could recover from much quicker. And so of course there was more consistency in my training, my ability to recover from sessions, piece together high quality training sessions over the course of the 10 weeks leading up to my 10K race. Now, if you were just to do 500 meter reps, and the progression from that could be 10, then 12, then 15, then 18, then 20, but you made sure it was all under control, all manageable, and you weren't striving for that pace, and that should be in control and manageable because you're essentially holding your 5K pace. Now, what I would suggest, and I didn't do this, I kept on with 5K pace, but once you get a lot past the volume of 5K, certainly that 15 times 500, 18 times 500, and 20 times 500, I'd move that to a more manageable, controllable 10K pace. So if you break that into 10 times 500 meters, very simple, straightforward session, as long as you set yourself up to run those intervals and the heart rate graph is staying stable, both the efforts and the heart rate recoveries. Once it feels easy, you can up the amount of reps that you're doing. Number two, what I decided to do instead was to become comfortable at running faster than 5K pace and moving towards becoming very comfortable at running 345 or 350 per kilometer. So I broke 6 kilometers worth of volume into 250 meter reps, and I held 430 pace for each individual rep. So 24 times 250 meters with a minute rest in between. I'm going faster than my current, at that time, 5K pace. And then I'm starting to use my body in exactly the way or the direction that I want to be running in just 9-10 weeks from now at that 10K race. And over the weeks, I gradually increased that pace for those 250 meter reps to get to 4 minutes per kilometer. And that made me insanely happy. And what it did was help the next session. So the third session I did was kilometer repeats. Of course, it's natural. You want to run those 500 meter repeats, those 250 meter repeats, and those kilometer repeats. And I knew that on limited time before the 10K race, if I just got those 3 paces right and those sessions right, and they were all controlled, manageable for me, and so it wasn't taking too much time to recover from a quality session, that my entire game would move forward, both my times in the 10K, the 5K, but also gradually the times that I could run for 250 meters, 500 meters, and a kilometer. And so that first session, 6 times 1 kilometer with 60 seconds rest in between at my current 5K pace, but by this point, starting to get pretty used to, because of the shorter reps, starting to get used to that faster pace. So now I'm somewhere between 430 and 440 pace, which of course, because I'm being methodical and strategic about it, is already improving the time that I could go all out for a 5K, but I'm thinking bigger goal. I want to run a sub 40 minute 10K in just 10 weeks. And so I'm not interested in proving to myself along the way an all-out effort for the 5K until the time is right. And so over the weeks, I just focused on those 3 intervals. And what changed was the pace that I could run each session. And when it felt easy, I would also add the volume. So I built from 6 kilometers or 6 times 1 kilometer at that 5K pace, and then gradually quicker as it felt easier, to 7 times a kilometer, and then 8 times a kilometer. And exactly the same for the 250 meter reps. I'm doing 24 to begin with, then I'm adding another 4, so another kilometer. So I'm doing 28 reps. And you know, I didn't have the knowledge that I had now, so I ended up doing 32 times 250 meters, which even now would be a ridiculous session for me, but it worked. If you are still in control, and when you get to that final quarter of the session, the pace is not dipping, and you're not trying to strive for that pace because you want even splits. And so I always focused on control, managing, and just thinking, not just about that session, but the recovery to the next session. Because I knew that unless I patched together high quality sessions over total 9.5 weeks, and I didn't even do a taper, that I wouldn't be able to move forward 20% with my 10K time. And also along the way, 20% with my 5K time. And with 2 weeks to go before the 10K race, which is a bit soon before that 10K all-out effort, the A goal, I did a time trial of 5K. And that came in at 18 minutes and 58 seconds, just under that 19 minutes, and not quite for the goal that I was trying to hit, which was 3:45 per kilometer. But I knew that I was in the right direction. Wasn't an easy time trial. They weren't even split, but it was much better than what I had been doing for 5K and certainly for 10K. And so what that did for me, and I didn't even think it at the time, but what it did is allow me a couple of weeks to smarten up my approach to the 10K race, the execution and pacing of the 10K race. And of course, what happens when you're doing 250 meters faster than that 3:45 pace, the 500 meters at around about that 3:45 pace, and the 1 kilometer reps in just under 4 minutes, along with that proof of the 5K time trial, which doesn't have the race energy. I've not tapered, I'm still on fatigued legs, didn't know it back then, and so I didn't even taper for the 10K. I did a session midweek in order to prepare myself, but when it got to the 10K race, I was able to go sub-40 and run 39 minutes and 28 seconds, because all of a sudden, I knew much more how to pace it, but I was getting so much more out of every single session, and I was recovering faster, and I knew what it was to run 5K, half the distance, in quite a bit quicker than that. So all of a sudden, I'm at 6 and 7 kilometers and waiting for that moment of, okay, can I finish this? And it's not happening, because on a regular basis, I'm used to doing 6, then 7, then 8 kilometers worth of volume at the pace that I want to run that 10K. So at 10K pace and 5K pace, and for the shorter reps, 250 meters, considerably faster. Now, that can work for anybody. Of course, it depends on your training background and what you've tapped into so far. There are 10 to 20, if not 30 different areas, improvement points. But the key movement that had changed my entire outlook to the 10K, pacing it, and also the 5K, was warming up before sessions and looking after my body so I could patch together consistency. And I can give you the best marathon plan, the best 5K plan, the best 10K plan on the planet. It's easy to do that. But unless you follow the plan and be self-aware enough to know when to push and when to back off, and also the plan is within your capability to start with, and most importantly, it factors in everything else in your life so that the training fits into what time, when you have available to run, then it doesn't matter whether you have been training for 20 years or 2 months. It all depends on what you've been doing in your training. Good luck, and let me know in the comments below. What's your favorite session to do? Those shorter reps, 250 meters, those medium reps of 500 meters, or kilometer repeats? Where are your strengths and weaknesses? I'd love to know that in the comments.